Hey, what's up guys? Disney Nuts here. How you guys doing? So today's video is actually going to show you what I have in my bag. This was a question somebody asked me a while back. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I have as of 2022. So as for cameras, I have two main cameras. One is the Canon 80D, which is what I'm using to record right now. And then the other one is this one, which is the Canon R, which was a new camera I recently got, which is a full frame mirrorless, awesome camera, which is really cool, which is what I've been using for most of my shots now. Now when it comes to lenses, I did have the Canon 80D for the longest time. So that camera, it has the EF mount, which is what most of my lenses are. Now I did get an adapter for the R camera because these lenses are all great. And, you know, as you know, I love Sigma lenses and all this other stuff that I've used for the Canon 80D for the longest time. So I did get an adapter, which was this one, which allows me to use the EF lenses on the RF mount, which is the mount that the Canon R uses. Now when you use a mount like this where you're going to use some of the older lenses, you do have to set the camera to use a cropped frame, so you're not using the whole full frame, which is one of the advantages of the camera. So there's a couple of lenses that I did get which are RF mount for this one, which is taking advantage of the whole full frame. So the first lens that I use a lot is the one that actually is on this camera right now, which is the 17-50. And it's the f2.8, and it's a Sigma lens, which as you can see has got this great bokeh behind me, and I use it for a lot of stuff, and I love the lens. It's extra sharp, great 2.8 all the way through, so you can zoom in, you still get that cool 2.8 f-stop on it, which is really cool for sometimes even some of the darker rides. You can use this lens, which is really awesome. The next lens that I have probably a good 90% of the time on my camera is this one, which is the Sigma 10-20, and this is an ultra wide angle lens, which is awesome. And I love this lens because it provides somewhat a different types of photos than what you would usually get. You get a wider shot of the stuff, and it just looks really cool and somewhat breaking out of what different types of shots that everybody does with a regular lens. Now this one, the only disadvantage is that it's a 3.5 f-stop, but it's still great for all types of shots. And I that do night photography, when it comes to the f-stop, you're going to be using a tripod, so it works great. And I love this lens, and again, it's a Sigma. I love Sigma lenses, as you know. Now when it comes to prime lenses, there's actually a couple of prime lenses that I have, and the one that I have for the Canon 80D, which is the RF mount, is this one, which is the 30 f1.4 prime lens. And this lens is amazing for dark rides and stuff like that. 1.4 means that you let in more light, so you can get faster shutter speed, and you can do some really cool stuff in lower light situations, freezing the action and stuff like that. And this one, to be honest with you, I like better than the nifty 50 because it's somewhat more of a natural distance. Now remember, when we're talking about crop sensor lenses, even though it says 30mm, it's actually a bit more because you have to multiply the factor of the crop lens. In this case, it's 1.7 or 1.6. So what is a 30mm comes up to being like a 46, stuff like that. And then when you're talking about the 50, comes up even more. So I think that the 30 is a really good mix if you're shooting with a crop sensor camera, and 1.4 is just awesome. Now this one, of course, is a little bit more expensive than the nifty 50 out there that Canon has, but it's well worth the price if you ask me. Now another prime lens that I have is this one, which I'm hoping to do a review soon, and this one is actually for the RF mount, and this is the Viltrox 85mm 1.8. And this one I bought because I wanted to get something that was you know, somewhat zoomed in, you know, if that makes any sense, a little closer than the standard lens. But I didn't want to get the 70-200, which is what everybody has, plus that we're talking a couple $1,000, which I do not have. So something like this is somewhat perfect, to be honest with you. I've been playing with this one for the last couple of weeks, and it is really cool. I hope to hopefully do a video of this one soon so you can see it. And this is, like I said, the Viltrox 85mm 1.8 for the RF mount. So this is a full frame lens for the camera. Then when it comes to fisheyes, because you know I love fisheye shots, I actually have two of them. I have the one that I have for my Canon 80D, which is this one, the Optica 6.5 3.5 f-stop, and this one's awesome. I love this lens. I've actually had two of them. The first one broke, and I liked it so much I ended up buying a new one, and this was only like 150 bucks for the crop sensor, the 80D that I have, and it's awesome. Only downside of this fisheye, and most of them, is that they're all manual, but once you know what the settings are, you're good to go. Then on the other hand, I do got a fisheye for the RF mount, which is for the full frame, and this is a TT Artisan, and actually did a review for this one. So if you want to go ahead and check that out, this lens is really cool. And again, since it's full frame, you get some really cool sharp shots. And this lens is what I've been using for a lot of stuff, because even though it is a fisheye, you can still crop some of the corners and get a really good ultra wide angle effect on it. So this lens is really good. And then as for other lenses, the ones that I don't use too much, for example, is this one, which is the 75-30, which is my kit lens that came when I first bought my Canon T3 Rebel. And even though it's 70-300, and you know, the really good range if you're looking for stuff with parades, for day stuff it's great. Just that I find it's not as sharp as some of the other ones. Now, if your photos are going to Instagram or something like that, then this is more than enough than what you need. But once you start blowing this stuff up, you'll see how soft it becomes, and the images aren't as sharp as some of the stuff like the 85mm, you know, which is like really crisp. And then something like this, what I like, that since they're so sharp, you can actually still crop and get some really good shots. In the case of the 70-300, I find that if you crop a little bit, you start losing even more of the quality. So I rarely use this one, and I know a couple of my friends have it, but it's one that I rarely use, to be honest with you. So when we're talking about certain situations where I use certain lenses, I'll go ahead and tell you. For example, when it comes to stuff like parades, if I want to really get a really good shot of the person's, you know, like cropping in the face and get a real good detail of the face and expressions, I'll use the 85mm, which is this one. If I'm using my crop sensor, I'll go then with the f1.4, the 30mm, which is really good, and it gets that really good bokeh. If I am very close to the float, which means I'm in the front row and I want to get the whole float and you want to get more than just the person, that's when I'll use my ultra wide angle, which is the 10-20. So again, this all depends what types of shots you're trying to achieve. Now when it comes to night stuff, I won't use prime lenses. It just doesn't serve the purpose for what I'm looking for. So night shots, I'll use again my ultra wide angle, the 10-20, and I'll use maybe the fisheye in some cases if I'm really up close to certain items that I'm taking photos of. But I won't be using, for example, like the 70-300 for night shots and stuff like that. Now when it comes to fireworks, I will be using the lens that I have on this camera right now, which is what I call my regular lens, which is 17-50, because remember, the fireworks are pretty far away, and if you shoot something with like a fisheye, you're really far back, the fireworks are going to look really far away, and it's going to look really weird, and it's going to feel like there's stuff missing in the image. It's not going to be as impacting when you put those fireworks shots. So when shooting fireworks, make sure you zoom in as most as possible and fill in the whole frame, because it gives the more effect of the fireworks. And one tip on that is to always include something like a building or a structure, because it makes it show that the fireworks are really big. Okay, so that's it. That's all I have in my bag and all the lenses that I have that I use for my photos. Hopefully this answers the question of what lenses to use in certain situations, at least what I use. Again, these are the types of shots that I like to take. And if you got any other questions or you want to know a little bit more about anything that I have here, feel free to comment below and I'll create a video for you. Okay guys, until then, see ya. Bye.